The League of Women Voters of Cupertino Sunnyvale presents a state legislative candidate forum on education. Tonight's forum will be moderated by Cupertino Councilmember Rod Sinks.
So good evening, I'm Polly Bovey. I am the superintendent of the Fremont Union High School District that's in Sunnyvale and Cupertino, so we're sort of bridging both parts of the districts you're going to be hearing from this evening. And I've been an educator in California for 40 years. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to frame this complex and painful dilemma that's facing our state's education system. I'll be using materials from many sources, including the National Education Association, California Budget Project, McKinsey Global Institute, and a recent presentation by the Undersecretary of Education, Dr. Martha Cantor, who I think we all know from our community. Many of you, as you walked in, received a quiz as you entered tonight, and I'll tell you that it's a little like an open book test. The answers to the quiz will be embedded in my presentation largely, but please know that I have no intention of giving you a grade. I just was hoping to engage you in thinking with me about some of the complexities that face our own state in this time of economic and educational crisis. I'll be glad to post the answers at the end for those of you that just need to know your score. So, I think there's something we all agree on. This is a time when partisan politics is very strong, and there are disagreements among groups that continue. But what I found interesting is that it was quite easy to go through and find quotes from our founding fathers, from Abraham Lincoln, from George W. Bush, and from President Barack Obama, all of whom say education is essential and critical to our democracy and to our well-being as a country and a nation. Education is imperative, and we know that in the next few years, by 2020, which is not very far away, we're going to be way behind in the number of college graduates that we need, 1.5 million to be exact. And you'll notice on this slide that the number of jobs demanding a high school diploma or no high school diploma are shrinking. So the demand for additional education is huge. In fact, 62% of all the jobs by 2018 will require more than a high school diploma. And we're seeing the funding for all the education, K-12 and beyond, going down in the state of California. Now, I'm going to take another tactic here, which I think is important. It's not a big surprise that the more education you get, the more wages you earn. And that's important. We all know that. But I think what's also interesting is the more taxes we pay. And that means that we're already fueling the system, the very system that's being cut now by increasing education. So we're cutting off the very blood we need to fuel this system with property taxes and other taxes that are mostly given by the large wage earners in our system, which again is based on education. So if you don't care about the founding fathers or Abraham Lincoln or the Republicans or Democratic presidents who agree on public education, and if you don't care about our future workforce, and it's not about getting more tax dollars into the system, then I would suggest you check your own pocketbooks. Because if you are a homeowner anywhere in California, what you know is that the public schools drive the values of your home. I just took a few seconds today to look at the Sunnyvale Sun and the Cupertino Courier, and I just took 2 pages of real estate ads. I better hold them up right side up. And what does it show you? All the highlighted areas name schools as the reason you should buy this house. So no matter what, public schools influence our economy. They influence much of what we care about in the state of California. So given how great the importance of our schools are to our present, our future, our pocketbooks, you'd think we would be doing better than we are. So you might ask the question, how have we allowed California education to go from first to worst? And we have. It's unfortunate. And yes, it's due to the economy. It's due to the structure. There are many reasons for this economic and political reality that's come to roost here in California. But it's important to know some very small facts that are in only a short line here on the screen, but really have big impact on the students that are in the state of California. In K-12 education, half of the budget shortfalls in the state have been taken and absorbed by K-12 education. So of the $16.5 billion cuts, $8 billion have come from schools. The California teacher workforce for K through 12 education has been cut by 34,000 teachers. Not a small number, and that puts us in the lovely rank of first place as the highest number of students per teacher in the nation. Now, I want to talk about that number for a second because it's tiny on the screen, but it only says 22.1. And I was talking about this presentation with one of my colleagues who's a teacher, and he said to me, how is it possible for it only to be 22.1? I don't have a class all day that's smaller than 38. And that's because this number came from counting every student in the state of California and dividing by every teacher. And that's the number we get. But just in case you're wondering, the rest of the United States averages out at 14.1 students in their class. A very big difference than it is in California. In addition to this, we've seen a great deal of reduction in instructional time, just at a time we know we need more time to teach kids what they need to know. 60% of our districts in the state have cut instructional days, 30% more than a week, and 65% have eliminated summer school. Now, although that might have yielded some real cheers from students across the state of California, that is not a good thing, because it is that very summer school that allows students who are behind to catch up, that aren't making graduation requirements to make them. And those students who decide after their freshman year, it's time for me to get to college, it gives them an opportunity to make up the credits and courses they need to get into a college. So cutting summer school is a huge loss to our state. Now, let's talk a little bit about funding. The figures that I have here are 2010-11, and I apologize for not having some more recent figures, but I wanted to be sure that I was giving you accurate numbers. So let's talk about how we would compare. And let's start all the way back with 2001-2, because already there we were almost $700 below the national average of funding per student. And you'll see that although it increases, it pulls back a little in 07-08, we have now shot ahead in 10-11 to almost $3,000 shortfall from the national average per student. And believe me, this does not include the May revise. This does not include the possibility that some of the initiatives will not pass in November, because this would increase that cut by more than $700 per student. But let's ask a question. You know, there's nothing to compare it to. Is $2,800 a lot of money, or is it a little money? I mean, how much does it really cost to educate a kid? That's a really great question. So maybe it will help you to compare it to another state that's not so dissimilar in terms of ethnic diversity and those students who are non-English speaking. So we're going to compare it to the state of New York. This is a comparison between 2000 and 2001 to current time, 10-11, and the number of dollars spent per student in those two states, California and New York. It's a very shocking comparison. $2,800 is enormous when you're talking about having a small number of dollars to educate every child. So I hope this gives you some comparison of how much California is trying to do. A lot with a little, that's for sure. So I thought this might also be helpful to you to bring it down to a local perspective. Alum Rock Union Elementary has lost $9.25 million in the last few years. Franklin McKinley, $7.5, Eastside, $15.25 million, and the Fremont Union High School District has lost $12.5. So all schools in the area have lost significant numbers of dollars. All schools are hurting. The number of issues that every school in the county faces is huge, and we are always trying to decide how we can do more with less. So I'd like to say that there are many things that are at risk, and it's not that I don't understand that there are complications. There's not money for a lot of things. There's not money for preschool. There's not money for social programs. So having no money for schools is only part of the problem. All of us understand this. But I think it's important to know something about what's at risk. And the reason I'm going to use the faces of my students is partly because I know them and I have permission to use their faces, but it's also because I think there's something important about the Fremont Union High School District. We are essentially at the state average for funding. That might shock you, There are many districts to the north of us that have many more dollars than we do, but we still produce great students. That's largely because of the collaborative we have with our students, our teachers, and our parents to make kids great. But these are the very things that we're so proud of that are truly at risk. We have held on as long as we know how. That would be AP Science courses, programs for English learners. This was our English learner speech contest that happened just last night. It was incredible. We have kids who are already getting patents for their designs, and it's pretty amazing to see what our kids can do. And we are certainly at risk for losing all elective programs, music, and the arts. And losing a comprehensive high school is a sad thing. We really don't want to do it. It's also possible that we are already risking those students who are the first ones to graduate from high school or college because we don't have the opportunities for them to make up credit. So this is a serious time in education, and we do not anticipate that any of you are here today are going to try to answer these questions or going to have a simple answer. I don't think there is a simple answer. The issues developed over many years, and there are reasons that are structural, they're economic, they're political realities that exist in California that make finding a solution to this incredibly difficult. But there are generations of students at stake, and I don't think we can wait to save our schools. So I would like to end with this quote, and it's Nelson Mandela who observed, "There's no keener revelation of society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." And I've added something that's actually from a book by Fullen and Hargraves, and it says, "and their teachers." And I added this for a very special reason, because I think there are things that need to be done that go beyond the money, that go beyond the funding. We are often in public education compared to other nations and how successful the students in other nations are by comparison to the students in the United States. But what is a very interesting fact is in all those nations that do better than we do, public educators, public teachers have a whole different status within the society. The very best and brightest of the college students go on to be teachers in those countries. It is the respect and the valuing of teachers in this system that needs to be part of the package, that is in addition to the funding that we so sorely need. So I don't envy you trying to answer the questions or finding the solutions, but I hope you know that we will be partners with you in trying to work through this and understand the complexities. And again, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to frame this today. And I've been asked to ask Rod Sinks and the members of the Assembly that are here, or running for the Assembly, to please come forward.
This is the new District 24. It goes all the way up past Half Moon Bay. It includes Menlo Park, Atherton, all the way down to Los Altos Hills, and Sunnyvale. And to stage left here in this direction, we have the 4 candidates who would represent you in our state assembly from District 24. Now, south of this line, you'll see is District 28 sneaking up on us. So that includes Cupertino and Point South. And let's start with District 24, and we'll go from stage left to right. Yes, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Gabby Espinosa. I have a bachelor's degree. I come from the bank industry. In 2004 until today, I own the Contender Gym LLC in Mountain View. I have been success for 8 years. In 2008, I was election officer in the precinct 24/7 during the president election. I want to be your state assemblywoman, District 24 in California. My platform, true in government and discipline. Right now, we know on the crisis economy, around $15.6 trillion. I have a 2 goal mind. Number 1, the hemp industry beside oil industry. We can make money from the hemp industry. We get the tax, we can pay off student loan, we can build a school, we can create a job, and California become leader in the nation. The second one, immigration reform. We make money close the border, speak English only, loyal and honest to U.S., stop using public welfare. Remember, vote for Gabby Espinosa, State Assemblywoman, District 24. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rich Gordon. I am a fourth-generation Californian who has committed his life to community service. I spent 20 years running a nonprofit youth agency, providing services to young people and their families. I served for 5 years on the San Mateo County Board of Education and for 13 years on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. The last 18 months, I've been a member of the California State Assembly, and I'm seeking to return to the State Assembly in the new District 24. When I ran for the Assembly 2 years ago, I said that I thought that there were 3 primary issues that needed to be addressed in California. One, we needed government reform. We need to change the way we do business in California. Our system is blatantly broken. Secondly, I said we had to put a priority on education, that we should do no harm to our schools, and we should do everything possible to try to restore funding to our schools. And third, I said that it was imperative that we maintain and protect our environment in California. We've been a leader, and we should continue that leadership. I'm seeking re-election because the job's not done. There is more work to do in all 3 of those areas. I maintain those as priorities, and I look forward to discussing, particularly tonight, my second priority in the area of education. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you guys for coming out to Cupertino tonight. Thank the League of Women Voters for setting up this forum for us. And I really cherish the opportunity to get to meet all of you. Hopefully we can after the forum. Once again, my name is Joseph Rosas. I've been a community activist for about 10 years now. I started out working with the immigrant community, educating them on the issues, empowering them to go petition their elected officials, whether they can vote or not. There is a very concerted effort to discourage people who can't actually vote to get involved in politics, and I work to change that. Following my time with the immigrant community, went on to work with California Common Cause, fighting money in politics, and that is my second major issue following education. And I'm actually doing what I preach. I vowed to run my election with less than $1,000. And it's the reason I'm an independent. I don't want to play into the fundraising game that dictates elected officials and state assembly members to raise a minimum amount of money depending on which committee they're elected to. My personal life, been experienced in small business. I'm a network security advisor, and I come from a line of small business owners in the area, and I hope to meet you all, and please ask me as many questions as you need. Thank you.
Hello, my name is George Yang. I come from China 20 years ago and attended public schools. I have a master's degree in telecommunications management and a bachelor's in computer information systems. I have 2 kids. Education is going to be my biggest reason that I'm running this election. I have just learned that from a report by Stanford Institute of Economic Policy that our state's University of California system will have no money from the state by the year 2022, and that is only 10 years away. My daughter is age 5. I have a son that's age 1. By the time they are ready to go to UCs, there will be no support from the state whatsoever. And that's why I'm running to make sure that by the time she's ready, our state will still have a strong and prestigious and leader of the world UC system that we can be proud of. Thank you very much.
I have a student, Sid Malady. You have a question for all the candidates to answer, and each candidate will get 1 minute, and we will go again from stage left all the way to the right.
Hello, my name is Sid Maladi, and I'm a sophomore attending Lynbrook High School. And my question is, Given that California is 47th out of 50 in per student funding, do you have any plans for improving this level? If so, how do you plan to raise the dollars necessary to accomplish this?
Okay. Again, my name Gabby. I can answer that. We already know we are crisis economy, and then because the student loan and etc. And then I think to solve this problem again, we have to find a way to get the better education. After middle school, the kids can transfer to high school just 2 years, and then after 2 years from the high school, jump to the bachelor with four years. But again, how we get this money, we have to solve this problem first, you know. Like I just telling you before, 2 gold mine, the ham industry, and then immigration reform. From that, get the money income, and then we can get our goal. Thank you.
Sid, thank you for your question. I think where we have to begin is to stop the bleeding. And that can be done by being judicious in the cuts that will need to be made in the state budget, keeping those cuts as far as possible away from education, and guaranteeing that we get a tax measure passed in November, which will help us at least stay whole for the moment. I also believe that as we grow the economy of California, and I believe it will grow, that we must make sure and make a commitment that the first new dollars go to education. We also, I think, have to take a close look at the tax structure of California. The tax measures that are on the ballot will give us some adjustment, but at the end of the day, we need to look at the way we fund public services, but specifically public education. And we need to make sure that we give tools to local communities to make sure that their schools get the kind of service and support that they want and they need.
Okay.
Okay. Education is my main issue in this race. I'm the product of public education, and I think I turned out pretty well. And it sickens me that children these days aren't going to have the same opportunities I did. So that's why I formulated a specific plan to refund our education system. We need to raise funding to the UC and CSU systems by $500 million each, the CSU and community colleges by $200 million, and K through 12 by $6.1 billion. This isn't a panacea. It'll still leave us slightly below average, and California shouldn't be average. But I actually can pay for this by repealing Prop 13 on commercial buildings and ensuring that there's no loopholes that allow corporations to pay 1980s taxes on lands they keep reselling.
I think Chad mentioned a very important point, and that is the $300 billion pension hole that the state faces today. It's actually $300 to $600 billion. Now, when we talk about where the money going, we need to find out where the sinkhole is and make sure that hole is plugged first. Now, we are all for having more money to education, but there are more than just throwing money at it. First of all, I believe the most important thing about education is to make sure that the kids really have a passion of learning. And we must make sure that we can encourage that with new and innovative ideas.
Thank you very much. We have a question from the audience regarding the point George made about the UC school. So I'm going to refer to chart number 4 that I have here on the video, and the candidates have in front of them. The question is this. State funding for the UC system is down to 10%, and it may be eliminated altogether in the next few years. The UC system gets $36,000 from out-of-state students, $13,000 from in-state students. And you may have noted that I'll add my own commentary here that the state has dramatically increased the acceptance rate for out-of-state students. How much tuition differential should the state pay, if any, to cover the cost between in-state students and the full ride that out-of-state students pay? And George, since you mentioned this, why don't you
Sure.
take this first, and then we'll go
No problem. Thank you very much for the
order.
question. The UC funding situation is pretty bad, and that's why I said the pension is one of the main issues. Now, there are many ways to solve it. They mentioned scholarships. Let me tell you a story. I have an uncle in Oakland who runs his own small business. He has 3 kids that are both college age, and he told me that he stopped making any more money, more than $50,000, because for every dollar that he makes, in addition to that, he pays $3 in tuitions to his kids. So if we are to reduce tuition, we need to reduce it for all Californian in-state students. Now, the other question about out-of-state students are that we should encourage them to come because we want to have a very vibrant campus where people with different ideas and different backgrounds can commingle and come up with new ideas. So we definitely should bring more foreign students and out-of-state students, but at the same time, keep local students' costs down for all students.
Joseph?
Once again, my refunding plan will allow us to roll back at least the last rise in tuition, possibly even the past 2. And that increased funding, I want to guarantee that it goes to students. I want a cap on chancellor salaries and other school official salaries. Right now, the chancellor of the CSU system makes more than our governor. This is absolutely unacceptable, and there should be legislation, and I vow to co-sponsor, co-author, and even write legislation to ensure that my refunding of our education system goes to students. Secondly, I want to help our returning veterans, because as our veterans come home from the wars, we need to put them to work, and we need to educate them. I want every single veteran coming home to have a 2-year exemption from out-of-state fees until they have permanent residence here in the state and they're settled down.
Rich?
California adopted in the 1960s a master plan for higher education. It was part of the building of the University of California system, part of the building of our Cal State University system. That master plan made a promise. It promised that if you graduated from a high school in California, there would be a place for you in our state's public higher education system. We have failed to keep that promise. I believe that there's a number of things that we should do in order to restore the promise. One, as with Assemblymember Fong, I'm a co-author of the Middle Class Scholarship Act. It would cause out-of-state corporations to pay $1 billion in taxes that they're not currently paying to California, and that money would be dedicated to scholarships and the drawing down of fees for middle-class students. I also do not support any cuts in the Cal Grant program. We need to keep that funded, and we need to make sure that we rein in the expenses at our state universities.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a very nice, high education. Every people have a dream. Okay. But right now, how do we get the money? Okay. I think I already said that before. 2 gold mine, we have to find. Number 1, the hemp industry. We have to do that right now to grow the hemp. No other income. Even Mr. Jerry Brown increased the tax and cut the budget measure. That's not right. That's not solve the problem. Again, the hemp industry, the best way for any resources and also for alternative fuel. And the second gold mine again, immigration reform, because everybody have to pay and every student have to pay. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Now we have a student from Cupertino High. Lena, could you come to the microphone and ask your question?
Hello and good evening, everybody. I'm Lena Sharif, a senior at Cupertino High School, and my question is, how do you stand on the 2 supplemental funding proposals that will appear on the November ballot? The 2 proposals being Jerry Brown and the Molly Munger proposal. Thank you.
And Gabby, would you like to start on this one?
Yeah, I hear the news, Mr. Jerry Brown say, cut the major budget, increase the tax. That's not the way. The best way, number one, grow the ham and we can get money. From that, we make money and then we can get the tax, build the school, pay off the student loan, and also California become leader in the nation. That's my goal. Thank you.
Thanks. Rich?
Yeah, I support Governor Brown's proposal for the tax measure rather than the proposal that Molly Munger has. Actually, I'd love to see them both pass, but more than likely that won't happen. If I had to choose, I choose the governor's proposal. The reason for that is that it gives the maximum, actually, protection to Prop 98 and to funding for local schools. Molly Munger's proposal, if I were on a school board, I'd love, because money comes directly into school boards. The problem will be if Molly Munger's passes, because of the way, the convoluted formula for funding schools, we probably actually have to cut some school funding in order to pay for other services in the state. The governor's proposal is a sound one. I support it. If it doesn't pass, then we face really devastation for our schools. So I urge everyone to get behind that.
I'm a big supporter of the government's current plan, but I was an even bigger supporter of the previous California Federations of Teachers Millionaires Tax. I actually gathered signatures for the CFT Millionaires Tax, and I'm proud to say that I did. That proposal guaranteed much more funding for our education system, and that's what brings corporate companies here, that's what brings jobs here, because we will once again have our highly trained, highly educated workers in this state, and companies will just see the value in that and be willing to pay the premium that they do for coming to California. But once again, we also have to cap those salaries because we need to ensure that this money goes to students, regardless of where it comes from. And I disagree with Ms. Munger's plan because the middle class has suffered long enough. We've been cut to the bone. There's been no shared sacrifice from the 1%, and we need to work for ourselves now.
I look at the two tax proposals as a big missed opportunity because we could have used this opportunity and said, let's have also reforms in schools, find out how we fund the schools and how we structure, how we have the relationship with teachers' unions. Actually, Rich has made a very good point. Money in the budget is fungible. If we use direct money into the schools, they will just take it out and fund some other program from schools, which just said it's probably very true. So we need to look at the entire state budget to see if there are other places where we can save money. For example, the state has 3 different tax agencies, the EDD, the Franchise Tax Board, and the Board of Equalization. They come to us and say, well, we don't have money for the kids, yet we have money to support 3 separate tax agencies that are still there and makes things much harder to small businesses. So when you come to us and say, we don't have money for the kids, I'm looking at it and say, did you really make all the sacrifices already?
There are issues to talk about in education besides funding. So in this area, we've witnessed charter school success in bringing up test scores in East San Jose, but we've also seen the fight tearing apart communities, for example, Los Altos. So are charter schools the answer to improved student success and to what extent?
Well, the other great charter schools in my district is the Phoenix Academy in East Palo Alto, which is doing a great job serving low-income communities. I actually disagree with Mr. Fong because I actually believe that charter schools should have more freedom to try different things. Because if they fail, you can always choose not to go there. But we need to give them the choice to try different new things so that we can learn from their mistakes as well as from what they did well. Now, that said, I still believe that we need to have a strong public schools because that's where most people will be going to, like I myself. So we need to have strong public schools in addition to charter schools.
I see charter schools a lot like medical trials. They are important test beds, places to try new things, but only for emergency situations. They do take money away from our main schools, and it creates a second class and a first class student body that may even develop senses of entitlement and not as much willingness to work with the rest of the students. And in the workforce, it alienates those students from the rest of the working people. We must focus our efforts on our main public school system. We can use some of the innovations from the charter schools, but they are simply that. They are test beds. And we should bring the innovations to our public school system instead of maintaining it for a single class of student.
Charter schools are the place that we test innovation in education in California. And like all innovative activities, there's candidly some that succeed and some that fail. And not all charter schools have been successful, but we should learn from those that have been. The other thing that we need to do in terms of looking at our charter schools is we need to clarify accountability and governance of charter schools. Local school boards are elected in communities to run the schools, but when charter schools form, they lose some of that control and we lose some of the public accountability. We also create a situation where public funding is also out of the control, oftentimes, of the local school board. Local school boards exist for a reason and a purpose. There are elected officials representing us in the educational arena, and we need to make sure that we support them as well as support our charter schools.
Gabby?
Okay. I'm a big on education. Believe me, I like to get the top high education. But again, after we get the money and after we get income, and then we can thinking about what we should do, you know. We already make mistake the past. The best way, I think, we have to change the system education because we need the best student, we need the best teacher. Everybody have to compete right now because the money talk. Where's the money? We don't have income. California broke, okay? Right now, to get the income, I say again, we have to grow the have right now because on the nation that we have $15.6 trillion. Thank you.
California, let's take a look at chart number 3 if we can show that, because I think it illustrates some of the issue here. California is unusual in that most funding for schools comes from the state. That isolates the bulk of school funding from voters and subjects schools to great uncertainty. And you can see from the chart until Prop 13 passed, most of our school funding came from property tax, as it does in most states. So, here's the big question. Is it time to modify Prop 13? And if so, specifically, how would you do that?
Well, I pay 4 times as much property tax than my neighbor. I buy a 2008 for me. All things should be on the table. As a reasonable and pragmatic candidate, I believe I will look at this. Actually, some of the idea that I presented about the commercial properties, I think it's something that we need to look into. However, go back to the biggest problem, and that is pension reform. That is in the range of $600 billion to $300 billion. This one, even if it's solved, it's probably in the double digits in terms of billions. So we need to look at where the biggest problem is and try to focus on those. Now, that said, I'm willing to look at different alternatives to see how we can reform this to be fair to small businesses as well as to homeowners.
Like I said, I want to repeal Prop 13 for commercial property. There is the important issue of renters, both businesses and apartment owners or apartment renters. And the landlords have already been charging today's rent. They're charging today's property values, but they are not paying today's property taxes. They're still paying the property taxes of when they bought the property. If it's some corporate office, many of them have not been reassessed since Prop 13 passed. Also, I also propose a one-time residential reassessment because many of our homes are underwater. They're worth thousands of dollars less than when we bought them. And it would help us all to pay lower taxes for a house that's worth less.
Thank you.
There are several unintended consequences that occurred because of Prop 13. From my perspective, among the worst was the fact that school boards lost the ability to determine the future of schools in their community. Money shifted to the state of California, and with that came a new interest in the state legislature in school policy and school funding. The legislature is the wrong place to be running schools. Decisions about schools are best made as close to the classroom and the student as possible by local school boards. Prop 13 needs to be changed. It is time to do that. It is unfair that people pay different values for homes right next door to each other, different property taxes, depending upon the year they bought the home. There is a way, I think, to maintain the key elements of Prop 13, make sure that we protect those on fixed income, that we make sure that there's not this year-to-year change in value, but it requires a longer conversation.
Okay, I disagree with the Proposition 13 because Governor Arnold, long time ago, 2007, I think, he did increase the tax from 7.25 changed to 8.25. And then Jerry Brown did the same with the Arnold. He's gonna increase the tax and then cut the major budget. I don't think so. That's a good idea. Right now, we just spending tax, and then after we spend tax, especially the political, spend the tax, and then after that, we're gonna increase the tax again. And then that's not solve the problem. They did before, they did again. They make mistake before, they make mistake again. I don't think so this is a good idea. My solution, we have to change and then grow the ham and then get the income first. Thank you.
Gabby, one of the questions from the office is, can you explain the hem?
Yeah, the ham industry. Like beside oil industry, we can use it alternative fuel, We can use it everything.
Oh, hemp, thank
Yeah,
you. Okay,
hemp.
fine, got
Yeah.
it. So that was one of my questions. Thank you for clearing that
Yeah.
up for us. We always hear that Sacramento is broken. What structural reforms would you make to make the state more functional at any level? And in particular, what is your position on the currently required supermajority of 67% needed to pass local parcel taxes used to augment school funding as part of a state reform solution? Let's start with Gabby this time.
Can you repeat, sir? I'm not focused.
Yeah, we always hear that
67%.
Sacramento is broken. What structural reforms would you make to make the state more functional at any level?
Yeah.
And what do you think about the 67% supermajority currently required for new revenue measures?
Increase the tax?
Yes.
No, I disagree. I refuse that. My opinion, we have to get the income first and then slow down about tax. Yeah. And then we have to get the income for the grow the hemp. And then from that, we can handle everything. And then we can build the school, build education. Everything have to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich?
First of all, in terms of reducing the threshold for passing a parcel tax, absolutely support that. I am not a fan of two-thirds majority for any purpose. It's called a supermajority, but I never understood what was so super about it. It seems to me that simple majority is the way we've always operated. It's the way we ought to operate. Reducing that also would give back greater control to local school boards. Now, what about Sacramento? Several things. One, I believe strongly that we need to adopt a 2-year budget cycle so that the legislature has a more thoughtful review of the budget process. Also, I'm a big fan and supporter of performance-based budgeting so that we can hold state agencies accountable for their expenditures. And I also think that it's time to force the legislature to introduce fewer bills. We need more quality in our legislation and less quantity.
Very good.
Yeah. I think the two-thirds requirement was put in place in order to not allow us to raise taxes. It was put in place by people that could fund campaigns, both political campaigns and ballot measure campaigns. It was put in place by the people that could afford to have a voice. Particularly now after Citizens United, one of my major issues is campaign finance reform. One thing I want to propose is to ban any interested party from donating to a campaign within 30 days of a major vote, either coming out of committee or on the floor. Second, I've already worked for AGR 22, which is a resolution in the Assembly calling on a repeal of Citizens United, and also the Disclose Act, which would require any political organization to promptly display the logos of their top 3 donors in any ad, be it print, online, or TV, and also to say the names of the donors in a moment of silence on the radio.
The reforms, I actually agree with Mr. Gordon that we should have 2-year budget cycles. I think that's a very sane way of doing it. And I also agree with him that we should have less number of laws. One thing that we can do is to limit how many bills that each legislator can sponsor at a given year so that they will focus on things that are really important instead of trivial issues like, I don't want to name something because everything has some people liking it. But on the 2/3 majority, I believe it's very instrumental to look at what the Democrats have done with it when they do have control. So look at the pension reform. Look at Governor Brown have come in and say, we want to do pension reform, and it was blocked by the Democratic majority in the state legislature. So if we do give them unlimited rights to raise taxes, what are they going to do with it? So that is my concern, is that if we give one party unlimited power, how is that going to help us?
We're now going to go to 90-second closing statements from each of the candidates. We're going to start with District 24 and Gabby.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. I wish a vote for Gabby Espinosa, State Assemblywoman, District 24. I will do the best for you. Thank you.
Rich.
Let me begin by thanking the League and all of the co-hosts for this event, thanking all of you for being here tonight, and thanking those who are going to be watching us when this is rebroadcast. This is an important part of our democracy. I bring you someone who is a proven leader. In my short time in Sacramento, I've gained a reputation as somebody who can get the job done, somebody who collaborates, somebody who works across the aisle to find bipartisan solutions, somebody who is a problem solver, and somebody who builds consensus. I want to continue to work on the issues that are really important to us. We make sure that we improve our education in California, and we will rebuild and strengthen our economy. We need also to make sure that we continue to protect our environment, and most importantly, it's time for us to reform the way we govern in California. I look forward to a vote in August on significant pension reform. That vote will occur at that point. And I also look forward to continuing to work with my constituents to make sure that we guarantee that California remains the kind of golden state that we all want it to be. I thank you all very much.
Once again, I'd like to thank everybody here for coming and staying, and I'd like to ask you to also stay for the Senate candidates, because our democracy isn't a democracy unless we participate. I bring a lot of things to the table. Long history of small business experience, both personal and my family. I bring fresh ideas, fresh specific ideas to this race, and hoping to the Assembly with your help. I have a long history of personal engagement in the political system, of empowerment, of putting boots on the ground and ensuring that those boots include mine. I'm practicing what I preach. I'm not going to play the partisan campaign finance games in the assembly. I'm personally knocking on every door. I don't have an army of staffers or a large flood of mailers. I'm looking forward to knocking on your door and meeting you personally. And the people that help me are all volunteers because they believe in me. Bring a lot of new things. And I hope to have your vote in June because you want a new California, but you also want to go back to a California that had pride, that had glory, and that was the shining state on the Pacific Coast.
George.
I want to end this forum with a personal story. My mother every time I go to school, she make a point of thanking all my teachers. Every time she goes to every school that I went to many schools. She would go there, know my teacher, and said, I appreciate what you have done for my son. And that have a very strong impact on me because I know that she cares about my education and that it is not free. It is always the work of many people that bring that to us. So with this opportunity, I would like to thank every teacher in this state and thank every parent for being involved in their children's education. Thank you.
So we're thrilled to have all of you candidates here with us tonight, and that will wrap up on, if I can get the wide view on camera, our friends to the north in the 24th District, and our friends to the south in the 28th District, who will support you in Sacramento. You have now hopefully better information on which to make that judgment.